The second presentation, okay.
Yes. So I will be presenting The Ear, a film made by Karel Kakinia in the 1970s. And my question was also, judging by the film, The Ear described the relationship of the leadership of the Communist Party and government in the Czechoslovakia in the 1950s to its top officials. So first, some historical context. So after the World War II, Czechoslovakia was under the impression that it would return to the pre-Munich crisis state of democracy. However, this did not happen. The 1948 elections cemented the communist rule. Voters could only approve or reject the National Front listing, and where blind votes were seen as opposition. So they were given the illusion of choice while securing the communist control. Klement Gottwald became the first communist president, which marked the end of democracy and the start of the communist rule of the KSČ, the Communist Party, for the next 41 years. So Czechoslovakia was turned into a fully command economy and a hardline, one-party police state. The film was released during the normalization period after the suppression of Prague Spring.
It wasn't released. I mean, where did you get that again? It was finished. It was completed in 1970, all right?
It was completed in 1970 after the suppression of Prague Spring, when liberal efforts were overturned and the film was reversed. So, the first years of communist rule in Czechoslovakia is remembered as the Stalinist decade, where the fighting against class enemies and enemies of the state were deemed necessary for the progress towards communist society. So this meant grand political purges, forcible collectivization of industry, and elimination of other ideologies. So the Communist Party tried to establish its superiority and reshape the society according to the Marxist and Leninist principles, and this was done through a number of oppressive measures. One of them were show trials, which were highly publicized court cases, and they were done to eliminate political opponents. These trials were staged and often scripted, and accusations were often fabricated. The defendants were forced to confess under pressure and threats or torture, and sentences were often executions. So these trials served as propaganda, demonstrating the regime's power and controlling people through fear. In the 1950s, in Czechoslovakia, 200 people were executed as a result, and hundreds were sent to labor camps. However, the labor camps had such harsh conditions that not many people survived their sentences. Then there was collectivization of industry, which was transforming the privately owned factories and businesses to the state ownership to control the economy. The goal was to eliminate capitalist influence, but this often led to shortages and repression. The church was also systematically suppressed as the communists tried to eliminate competing sources of authority and ideology. So the clergy were arrested or sent to labor camps, as religious activity was portrayed as counter-revolutionary. So the communist regime in the 1950s tried to control all aspects of life in Czechoslovakia and tried to impose fear upon Czechoslovaks. It overtook the economy, suppressed other competing ideologies, and was characterized by brutal oppression and repression of individual freedoms. So this was clearly represented in The Ear, which was created in 1970s during the New Wave, but people could only watch it after 1990. So the film follows Ludwig, a government official, and Anna, his wife, returning from a dinner party. However, they notice they don't have their keys. Then they notice the gate is open and there was a power outage, which sparks paranoia, thinking that Ludwig might be targeted by the government. So the couple is accustomed to the constant surveillance of The Ear, but through flashback to the party, Ludwig realizes the disappearance of his associates and fears that he might be the next. This Ear serves as a critique of the communist rule in the 1950s, showing how fear and state control can destroy personal freedom. It also reflects that fear is not just external, as it seeps into their relationship and distorts their intimacy. This is reflected through their constant bickering. However, they come together as they share the common goal of survival. surveillance. There is a theme of surveillance, and the film depicts that not even high government officials are safe, and they are under constant surveillance. They are monitored by secret police and subject to punishment. The leadership used fear and coercion to maintain obedience, creating a system where officials were both privileged and trapped by their positions. The secret police networks in the 1950s infiltrated everyone, and not even communist officials were safe, as the police aim was to uncover conspiracy in the highest positions of the party. This created paranoia, as government officials also informed on each other to advance their careers, and there was a constant cycle of suspicion, arrest, and forced confessions, as officials tried to protect themselves. Punishment and show trials reinforced the idea that no one was safe, keeping individuals in a constant state of paranoia and mistrust. Paranoia also became internalized, as states know everything about you and it can be used against you. The enemy in the ear is not visible, however, it is everywhere. You yourself become the enemy by saying things that can incriminate you. This is highlighted in the scene where Ludwig tries to commit suicide and Anna screams, "What do you want here? Do you want us to kill ourselves?" Showing how paranoia and the totalitarian system create extreme psychological pressures and hopelessness, which could result in ending your life. So, in conclusion, the film ends with Ludwig becoming the minister and Anna saying, "I'm scared." This is due to the things that could incriminate them and could be used for blackmail, showing that officials in the government are not safe and could be persecuted at any time. There are no catharsis or escape in the end of the film, emphasizing the persistent terror of living under dictatorship. The ear serves as a metaphor for the totalitarian system, showing how constant surveillance destroys personal freedom and trust, leading individuals trapped in fear. The film reflected the social and political life under communist rule, which was full of paranoia and violence.
Thank you very much. Okay, Czech film review, okay. Interestingly, I was in a student pub last week in Prague, and amongst other things, I talked to some students there, and we discussed this, and they know it. So it's quite interesting. This is actually, I don't know whether they were particularly knowledgeable students, but they've seen this film. So maybe interesting. I wanted to ask an irrelevant question. 28th of October is the Czech bank holiday, kind of, it's the foundation of Czechoslovakia, Czechs and Slovaks together in one state, on the 28th of October 1918. Apparently, under Fico, Slovakia doesn't celebrate it now. Do you know this?
Yeah.
Why?
I don't know.
Do they think that it was oppressive in the interwar period and now they are independent and they don't give a damn about it, or what? Or is that what you think? You don't know?
I don't know.
I'm not blaming you. I'm just wondering whether you're not there anyway. So yes, but Orbán is going to lose it, be outvoted, and will Fico then? I mean, another thing, if I may, this is I'm ridiculous, but all right. Czechs, you always think it's that the relationship between Czechs and Slovaks is like a little bit like the relationship between the Scots and the English. Like the Scots are the younger brothers of the English are much more sophisticated. The same the Czechs think about themselves, that the Slovaks are their younger brothers. And of course the languages are very similar. But I now understand, is that true, that Slovaks don't really give a damn about the Czechs, who those people that they are trying to emulate are the Hungarians? Is that true?
Well, I think Fico is trying
to, Fico certainly is kind of
like,
mimicking Orbán, yes.
Yeah.
Okay,
but
anyway.
I don't think, people,
Yeah. You know, because this is quite interesting. At the end of the 19th century, Slovakia was a part of the sort of greater part of Austria-Hungary, of Hungary, and it was really oppressed by Hungary, right? You didn't have any Slovak language secondary schools even. So everybody who wanted secondary education had to speak Hungarian. And yet, it kind of allegedly, correct me if I'm wrong, meant that Slovaks kind of felt that the Hungarians are better people. Like, I mean, the proper middle class people were Hungarians, while Slovaks were kind of just You don't experience this these days?
Anymore.
No, you don't know. Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much. We've got another film tomorrow, which still is from the 60s. I'll go here and just briefly talk about it. It's called The White Lady. It's been, this film tomorrow, it's been directed by a totally normal kind of entertainment comedy film director. And it's a comedy, and I think you will enjoy it. But at the same time, I think I said that in my message to you, it is a really profound study of communism and its practicalities. And there is this other, basically it takes place in a smallish town, with a castle of course, which is basically most Czech cities are kind of smallish towns, I suppose. And one other important point, which I think I've mentioned, so I keep repeating myself, Western students, British students, usually make this mistake that when they look at communism, they kind of think that government ministers are the power holders in communist regimes. But I mean, like in Britain, look, Keir Starmer is the prime minister, but also he's the sort of head of his political party, but of course that is not relevant for governing the country. What is the power resides in the post of the prime minister. But in communism, notice this tomorrow in that film, this was different. Communist Party officials were the rulers, and they often also doubled up as government officials. But government officials were sort of subordinated to the communist officials. And in this, I don't know, we've had the film The Cremator in this, didn't we? We had this Kopferking played brilliantly by that actor. And here, in this film tomorrow, this film, The White Disease, was made about 3 years before The Cremator. He brilliantly plays a communist official with all these ticks and everything, and people who would have seen this in the cinema, who would have been exposed to this communist nonsense from these officials, would have really laughed. So anyway, so you've got two figures that run this small town, and one of them is a government minister, and he's kind of second class decision maker, and all the decision making is being made by this communist, played by Mr. Kopferking, as it were. Hrušínský was the director. What was the name of the? Now the story is based on a 20-page book. 20-page story by a writer called Karel Michal. The little collection is in the library there, and it is absolutely short, underdeveloped. In this film, it was developed brilliantly. And basically what it is, these communist officials, you will see, the only thing that they are interested in is shoring up their power. Basically, everything has to be, watching out that nobody is trying to subvert them, right? The whole town is going to rot. They ignore everything. And there's a white lady, there's a castle, there's a picture, and there's a picture of the white lady, and local villagers come to the picture asking the white lady to do good deeds, to repair the stuff that the Communist Party, obviously in the town, is totally neglecting, right? Now, what is this a metaphor of? Now, under this Stalinism that you've been talking about here, they were really arrogant in this kind of 19th century manner. Again, this is something they have already been mentioning here as well, is that at the end of the 19th century, people had this kind of scientific optimism, like kind of everything is going to get ever better because science is discovering things and humankind kind of controls everything and it is to the good. We know very well that, I mean, global warming and idiotic behavior of governments and everything, that it's not true and things probably, even with science, are going to get worse. So we are now very skeptical. But this at the beginning of the sort of communist regime, certainly, they kind of adopted this scientific optimism and believed that kind of man rules the world and that's for the best. And we control everything. And they even had this slogan, Poručíme větru dešti, we will order even the wind and rain above, right? So we are absolutely confident, they kind of preach, that we can control the natural world. But this white lady is a metaphor of the natural world because they absolutely can't control it. And the white lady shows them up because she does for the people what the allegedly popular government is not doing for them. At the same time, the population of that village, which is a metaphor for the whole country, I suppose, is incredibly kind of terrorized into submission. They know that the rulers are lying, they clap them when they are lying, but they do whatever nonsense the system asks them to do. This is yet another, I also mentioned this here before, characteristic of these films of the 60s, which is probably something that isn't done today because, I mean, the popular vote, as I said, is sacrosanct. Nobody is criticizing voters, even in America when they elected Donald Trump. But here, this is kind of a sign of intellectual elitism. This film also criticizes the general public for behaving like idiots. I think the film basically argues, for God's sake, you don't need to go along with all this nonsense. It only survives because you are just kind of tolerating it. So that's basically all I want to say. It is a really interesting study of how they don't do anything and how they can't, they are proudly pronouncing that they control the natural world, but they don't. So anyway, come tomorrow. It's a good film. Thank you very much. Well, what's the time? 42. Time to go. Thank you very much. I hope somebody watches this, but anyway, thank you.